Hello everyone, welcome to the first of the Land series. In this series, I'm going to introduce fictional works that deal with land from all kinds of perspectives: political, decolonial, post-colonial, feminist, ecological, and so on. By the end of this clip, I hope you gain a better understanding of the intricate relations of different national literatures under the theme of land, and discover how land is the key repository of transnational experiences. In this particular clip, tune in closely to see how a South African novel and a South Korean novel share a similar sensibility towards the land that once was and was not, and now is theirs and ours. Let's go connect some dots. In South Africa and South Korea alike, issues surrounding land has been receiving keen attention. Whether it's a problem of claiming an island east of South Korea as its own in what is popularly known as the Dokdo Dispute, or a problem of restoring the land to South Africa's black farmers, or a problem of restoring real estate and housing prices in San Francisco, the globe is plagued by problems related to land. At this moment, we're losing icebergs, sea level is rising, koalas from the recent forest fire in Australia are recovering. Land, as you can see, is the archive of all kinds of disputes: colonial land reforms, squatter problems, soaring real estate prices, and housing crisis. I'm putting a South African novel Disgrace and a South Korean novel Black Flower side by side to see how each work deals with the loss of land and homeland. What kind of relationship does people have with the land they departed from, arrived at, or pursuing after? These are some of the questions I would like you to get a taste of from this clip, and hopefully my curiosity will also prompt you to read these works. You might wonder why South Africa and South Korea? Other than the South factor, do they have any similarities? More than you would think so. Both countries were under colonial rule, then a dictator rule for a long time, until finally these nations underwent rapid democratic transitions. However, the legacy of colonialism still remains in many parts of the South African and South Korean societies. Land, housing, and real estate is one of them. Known for its beautiful coastlines and a safari, and offering a rich field site for archaeologists and anthropologists, South Africa is a beautiful country indeed. When you look into its history, though, you might think twice. South Africa is located at the southernmost tip of the African continent. It initially existed as several different countries, later to be united as a republic, then as a modern sense of a nation. Cape Town, at its southwestern tip, is the national capital. Because of South Africa's geographic location, it became a trading post or a resting point for European trading companies. What started as a stopover turned into a layover, then a settlement. Cape Town has been in use by the Dutch East India Company as a resting point in their trading routes to and from India and Asia. In 1652, Dutch settlers in Cape Town began to settle there. These settlers are called Boers. As they began to settle, they often had conflicts with their metropolitan rulers. Then, the British acquired the Cape in the early 19th century. In 1910, South Africa became united under the British rule. Its colonial reality became ever more felt and harsh under the British, who implemented two symbolic acts. First, the Works Act gave skilled jobs only to the whites. Second, Natives' Land Act prohibited any blacks from owning land in South Africa. The National Party, whose majority consisted of Afrikaners who were bitter about losing their economic and political authority, wins the election in 1948. They implemented a rule of separation called apartheid. Against their rule, the ANC, short for the African National Congress, consolidated power and finally took office with the first democratic election in 1994. You probably have heard of Nelson Mandela, if not any others. He was elected in 1994. The ANC is still in power, and the current president of South Africa, also from the ANC, is Cyril Ramaphosa. Now, what is this apartheid policy, and why is it highlighted in red? Apartheid in Afrikaans language means separateness, or the state of being apart, literally separate plus hood. Apartheid was a systemic racial discrimination against blacks and coloreds in South Africa. Every individual was assigned a race based on his or her appearance, and non-whites had to wear a name tag. Race then became their label. However, this separation, let alone the fact that racial separation is unreasonable, was based on arbitrary standards. Blacks and coloreds were barred from owning any property or land to farm on. Whites owned more than 99% of the arable land, practically severing blacks from any kind of economic sources. These blacks and colors were forced to work as tenant farmers on white landlords' plantation-sized farms. The apartheid policy was in place from 1948 well into the 1990s. What is important to remember is that this policy was a systemic and codified effort to disenfranchise the blacks and coloreds of their right to land, property, and their own country. J.M. Coetzee, now living in Australia, is a South African writer known for his seriousness and philosophical novels. In many of the pictures, he hardly smiles, and the peculiar stint that he shows is perhaps also a reflection of the subject of his writings. He is a 2-time Booker Prize winner. He also received a Nobel Prize in 2003. He is born and raised in South Africa. Interestingly, he wrote a dissertation on the computational stylistic analysis of Samuel Beckett while doing a PhD at the University of Texas at Austin. In Disgrace, his novel I'm introducing in this clip, deals with a complex web of personal and political relations of South Africa's post-colonial reality. Then, what is South Africa's post-colonial reality like? It takes a long time for the colonial legacies and wrongs to be corrected and mended. Perhaps it is not possible to make a return to how the things were prior to the colonial rule. South Africa's post-colonial struggle has been at the intersection of race and gender, as well as personal history and national history. In terms of decolonizing effort, restoring power to the blacks is laudable, but it misses out on the oppression of women. Considering the 1994 election as the historical turning point and a new footbed of a democratic South Africa is great, but what about the stories of those who suffered and are still suffering? Where is the stage for their stories that walks a different trajectory from the national history? Disgrace, at a first couple of reads, is a book about rape, a father-daughter conflict, and a loss of white power. According to this reading, however, a white male literature professor rapes a black student, argues that he has the right to remain silent, gets kicked out of school for that, and when he moves in with his daughter is raped by a black gang of 3. She gets pregnant, but she refuses to have an abortion and decides to have a baby. But this same story takes a dramatic turn when using contrapuntal reading strategy. So what is a contrapuntal reading? It is a kind of reading practice that considers the perspectives of both the colonizer and the colonized. It is a decentering, reorienting, and unlearning process of reading. Through this strategy, you can understand different perspectives simultaneously as reading the notes while conducting an orchestra. Anwar Said, a scholar who has coined this term first, has said that the awareness of both the metropolitan history that is narrated and of those other histories against which the dominating discourse acts is crucial. When Disgrace is reoriented, it becomes a story of post-apartheid odyssey and how homecoming and power restoration of the black. It literally becomes the triumph of the black. So, Petrus, the black character in the novel, acquires 3 types of corpus: a plot of land to farm on, and a white woman as a wife, and a reaffirmation of his own body as a black person. Known for BTS, world's fastest internet speed, banchan dinners, and alleys that never go to sleep, South Korea is a fascinating country to explore. However, did you know that it also harbors a painful immigration and diaspora history? South Korea has been under various foreign powers, but the most prominently, the country was under Japan's colonial rule from 1910 to 1945. The novel I'm about to introduce deals with a group of immigrants who fled Korea in 1905 to Mexico when the Japan-Korea Treaty was made. This treaty deprived Korea of diplomatic sovereignty, and Korea became a protectorate of Japan. Kim Young-ha is a South Korean writer still actively publishing and writing. He records podcasts and even appears on traveling documentaries on TV. He is born and raised in South Korea, studied business at Yonsei University, but upon graduation, he took to writing as his profession. He debuted as a short story writer. Kim Young-ha's Black Flower, known in Korean as Come In Goat, is a story about the Korean diaspora, and it's also a story about immigrants to Mexico from a local perspective. So his book deals with a group of Koreans abroad a ship to Mexico, and these Koreans dream of returning to their homeland after getting rich. However, they are practically sold as slaves to Anakin haciendas. They become countryless, they become landless, and they become powerless. However, with a little bit of a tweak using contrapuntal reading strategy, this story might read a little different. When Black Flower is read contrapuntally and refocused, it becomes a story about the loss and rediscovery of corpus. Everyone experiences some kind of loss of corpus, of body. For example, they don't have any land that they can call theirs, and they don't have home country to go back to because Korea literally became the protectorate of Japan. And they lose the women of their loves, and they lose family members. Family members sold off to other farms, and they all separate. And women also lose their sense of corporeal ownership because they're sold for money to landlords. And all these people, they fight against stubborn land. For example, they work under the scorching sun, and the weather is super dry, and the ants and mosquitoes, they crawl over, and they don't have a proper house to sleep in. However, they have to work, and they can't do anything against this power of land. Let's take a look at the book more closely. Then, where would you use the money? Seo Ki-jung glimpsed to where his wife and children are and said in a quiet voice, hesitatingly, "I'll buy a plot of rice paddy." If they had land, no one would have gone aboard the ship. People became soldiers because they didn't have land. Men weren't married because they didn't have land. They had nowhere to go or return because they didn't have land. That is why they crawled into those egregious barracks. At another point, the contract was over, but no one really volunteered to return. It was the fate of the landless. For various different reasons, people could not return back home. So as you can see, even in Kim Young-ha's Black Flower, land becomes a key issue for the Korean immigrants in Mexico. From the rice paddies in Korea, to the rising house prices in 10 major cities, to the disappearing Mayan civilizations or the mystery of it, to the homeless problems of San Francisco or New York, and all the way to the koalas caught up in deadly Australian bushfires, land is an issue that we are all dealing with. This clip is part of the BK21 Plus project at Yonsei University's English department. All the images used in this clip are from various websites under Google search. Please request the creator for sources. For further information, contact the creator. This clip is created by Choa Choi as part of the fulfillment towards the BK21 Plus project scholarship. Thank you for listening.